Hey guys, welcome back to Casual Card Games, and today I'm going to be coming at you with my Kaalia the Vast Commander deck profile for May 2023. So this was the third Commander deck that I ever made. As soon as I saw this thing, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. Angels, Demons, Dragons, oh my. Uh, that's a Kendrick Lamar reference. But yeah, this deck, it's evolved over time. Basically, a year ago I disassembled it because I was getting out of the game, and then I got back in, and this is one of the latest decks that I've rebuilt. I got a handful left that I still need to rebuild. I guess it would be about 5 that you guys haven't seen yet. 5 to 6, something like that. But anyway, all right. This deck, once again, if you know me, it's a 3-color deck. So I split my basic lands between 13 plains, 13 swamps, 13 mountains. So that's 39 lands total. That's what I run. You guys can run whatever you want. Just personal preference for me. Okay. So that's it for the basics. Let's put that to the side. Okay, so the most we run here is creatures. So we'll do the creatures first, lowest CMC to highest CMC. So, for anyone that doesn't know, Kaalia the Vast. So it's a 2/2 human cleric for 4 mana with flying. Whenever you attack within it, an opponent, you may put an angel, demon, or dragon from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking that opponent. This is from Commander 2011 originally, and people talk about this is one of the original, like, they call it boogeymen, but basically this was a scary card back in the day. Is it still scary? I mean, you really have to be careful because so many things have flying now or reach that, like, this can't just sail over anything, I think, anymore. And it doesn't have any protection, so that's the thing. It's susceptible, but people, my buddies that I play with, they say this is the deck they hate the most because they're like, when it doesn't work, your deck does nothing, and they're like, when it does work, you just take over the game. So they're always terrified if I get this card out, which, understandably so. Okay, so first we're going to start off with Keen Duelist. So 2 mana for 2/2. It's at the beginning of your upkeep. You and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put the card revealed into your hand. So basically for us, I'm just going to be honest, I think our average CMC of this deck is 7. We mostly play as far as Angels, Demons, and Dragons, because in my deck I wanted the most bang for your buck. We have the most 7 drops, and then we have a decent amount of 8 drops, and then a lot of 6 drops. So basically 7 is the most. So on average, you are more than likely, unless it's a land, you're more than likely going to get a 7 drop out of that. So 6 or higher, the odds of that is enormous. But basically, you guys each exchange, like, you basically look at each card and you reveal it, and like I said, more than likely they're going to be taking like 6 or more loss of life. We might take whatever they have. I mean, they could have a big thing too, but it also allows you to get an additional draw every turn while also draining your opponents, which is what I really like. Yes, you could be drained by your opponent. This is also a political tool. The person that might have the lowest CMC, you can kind of make an alliance with and go, look, like, I'll let you draw an extra card. Yeah, you might take a little bit, but you get to draw a card. And most people, they're not really going to complain about that. Okay, Ishin 2 Heavens is 1. I have already uploaded a deck profile where he is my commander, and I love it. But this is the only time where I've been able to run one of my other commanders in the 99, and Ishin's just too good to pass up for this deck because the main thing we're doing with this deck is attacking with Kaalia that has an attack trigger. There might be a handful of other creatures in this deck that have an attack trigger. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but when we get there, I'll try to mention it. But yeah, being able to drop 2 creatures with Kaalia with that card, hard to pass up. Kaalia, Zenith Seeker. I've heard a few people try this card as their commander. Look, adding stuff to your hand is great, but I'd rather be able to cheat them out. So anyway, this one, it's a 3/3 with Flying Vigilance for 3 mana. That's a good creature, like stat line right there. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You can reveal an angel, a demon, and a dragon from your hand and from among them, put them in your hand. Put the rest of your library in a random order at the bottom. The cool thing about this card is that you want to diversify your angels, demons, dragons. I think in here, my numbers are, I might be wrong on this, but I think it's 13 demons, 12 dragons, 12 angels, or it might be 14, 13, 13. Anyway, they're pretty much split up evenly. So the cool thing about this card is if you look at the top 6, if you have an angel, demon, and dragon from among them, you get to add all 3. Now, if you have 2 angels and 1 demon and no dragons, you only get to add 1 angel and 1 demon. So you want to diversify. But anyway, cool card. Personal tech that I never seen anybody run in this deck, but I think you should. Magus of the Moat. The 3 creature types that we play in this deck are all mainly flyers. I think I can't even think. I'd have to show. I'd have to look it up, but I don't even think I run any of the creatures I'm trying to cheat out that don't have flying. I think every single one of them has flying. Anyway, it's a 0/3 human wizard. Creatures without flying can't attack. It's going to bother our opponents. It won't bother us. Rakdos, Lord of Riots. So it's a 6/6. My buddy plays this as his commander. I mean, I think it's a cool build the way he does it, but for 4 mana, 2 black, 2 red, you can cast him, but you can't cast Rakdos unless an opponent has lost life this turn. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. This is a 6/6 flying trample. We just cheat this thing out. We don't even bother with the cast. We just cheat it out. And then from there, we might be able to drop more stuff from our hand. Aurelia the War Leader, for 6 mana, it's a Flying Vigilance Haste Angel for 3, and it's a 3/4 stat line. Whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So, one thing to remember and to keep in mind, I think I did a Kaalia deck profile years ago. I'm pretty sure I did. But the thing that got misconstrued that some people forgot is when Aurelia says you get to untap and creatures get to attack again, basically, as long as it's her first time, if you cheated out a creature and that creature doesn't either naturally have haste or you don't give it haste, that creature can't attack because it's still under summoning sickness. Even if you got to cheat it out and had it come in attacking, it still can't attack. So your untap, you always got to remember that you don't get to just swing again with the creature that you did the tapped and attacking with. Okay. Burning Rune Demon, this is a fairly newer one from the last couple years from Kaldheim. I think the last time I did this deck pro, I don't think this card had come out yet. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for exactly 2 cards with different names that's not named Burning Rune Demon, and obviously we're playing Commander, so that won't happen. Pick an opponent. Your opponent's going to put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Let's see. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, that's a 6/6 flying demon, so like that. So here's a newer one for me that I wasn't playing before, but I kind of like it. It's a 5/5 called Dawnbreak Reclaimer for 6 mana. Has flying. At the beginning of your... I shouldn't say has flying because all these have flying. At the beginning of your end step, choose a creature card in an opponent's graveyard. Then that player chooses a creature card in your graveyard. You may return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So we're playing nothing but big stuff. So like, I'm okay with making an alliance with somebody. We're saying like, yeah, you can bring that one creature back, but I'm going to bring mine out. Here's the cool thing though. Because we get to cheat out creatures fast, a lot of times when we'd be in a position to possibly have that effect come out, we could get this on like turn 4. And a lot of times our opponents aren't going to have anything in their graveyard yet. So we just be like, okay, cool. Sorry you don't have anything, but I do. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. If it doesn't, if someone wants to look up the rulings, if they don't have a target, do I get to still bring something back? I'd be cool for that. It hasn't come up yet in actual gameplay, but that's what I was thinking when I put the card in. Regardless, we should have better stuff in our graveyard than our opponents. Next card, Dragon Lord Kalakan. I like the Dragon Lords, but this is probably my favorite. It's a 6/5 dragon for 6 mana, flying haste. Other creatures you control have haste, which is always good. And then whenever an opponent casts a creature or planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in his or her graveyard, that player loses 2 life. I think out of all the times I've ever played Commander, I think this has only happened once. I think I had a buddy that was... Oh, you didn't see that. I think I had a buddy that was playing his rat deck, and he had a bunch of rat colonies, and this actually came into play, and I was like, whoa, watch out, dude. But anyway, next card. Ooh, new spice. Hellcarver Demon. So 3 black, 3 generic, flying demon. It's a 6/6. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice all other permanents you control and discard your hand. Exile the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. Okay, so here's the thing. You guys might read that and go, wow, that's a terrible card. Why would you play that? Now, here's the thing. When you're playing Commander, and especially you're playing a deck like Kaalia, it's a lot of go for broke kind of stuff. If I'm in a position where I have Kaalia, but let's say I'm in a hole, and I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this. If I let my opponent untap, they're going to win, or whatever. I have, at least with Hellcarver, if I can have it come in, tap and attacking, and do damage or whatever, yes, I will lose everything else. And I believe it even exiles itself, or maybe I'm wrong. Other permanents you control. So it will stay on the battlefield. You don't have to get rid of it. But yeah, I get a chance to look at the top 6 cards of my library and cast all those cards without paying their mana costs. And I have some really good cards in here that might be able to shift the tides of the game. So we play a lot of high CMC stuff, so that might be worth it. I'm not going to just blindly do this and be like, oh, I hope it works out for me. But, because it gets rid of all your permanents, so all your lands would be gone. But for us, like I said, I think it's worth taking a chance on as just a wild card of like, look, I'm out of options, I'm out of luck, I don't know what else I can do to get out of this when my opponent's about to win. Let me try a Hellcarver Demon. I like it. Okay, Hellkite Tyrant. I still run this in here. I know some people, I guess, if this has fallen out of favor in Kaalia decks, but in case you ever go against an artifact deck, I think it's great. It's a 6/5 for 6 mana, flying trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. You never know. You never know if your opponent has a lot of artifact tokens. If they have treasures, they would be forced to basically sack them all because they won't want to give them to you. And yeah, if your opponent just has, like I said, an artifact deck, you might be able to not only, completely screw up their plans, you might be able to get a BS win condition out of it too. Rakdos the Defiler. So I think this card is amazing in this deck as opposed to a lot of others. It's a 7/6 flying trample for 6 mana. When it attacks, sacrifice half the non-demon permanents you control rounded up. Here's the thing. When we cheat it out, it's not technically attacking. It's not declaring an attack. When this thing deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices half the non-demon permanents they control rounded up. That includes lands. So because of Kaalia, we can just cheat this thing in and not have to worry about the actual attack trigger of that card. But yeah, we can make our opponents sacrifice basically half their permanents. I don't know exactly how you say this one. Ryusei, the Falling Star. 5/5 for, and it has flying for 6 mana. Whenever it dies, it deals 5 damage to each creature without flying. In our deck, I think that's like Magus of the Moat. I think he technically doesn't have flying. And then it's like Keen Duelist and like Ishin, 2 Heavens is 1. I think everything else in our deck, every creature has flying, so that's it. Sarah's Guardian, 5/5 for 6 mana with flying, vigilance. Other creatures you control have vigilance. Giving our big stuff vigilance never hurts. Sower of Discord, great card in Commander. 6 mana, 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of those players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. I'm not going to lie. So, like, most of the time when I'm playing with my buddies, it's just 3 of us. So that also helps. But even if you're playing 4 players, I mean, it'd be nice to go, okay, cool. There's this one guy that has, let's say, flyers or whatever, and I can't get to him. But I have this other friend that he doesn't play any flyers. I can pair these 2 together, and I'll just hit the guy that doesn't have flyers. And then the guy that I can't hit will take damage just as well. All right. Now we're getting into our 7 drops. Ancient Brass Dragon. So it's a card out of the last year's Baldur's Gate. So whenever it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. When you do, put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, where X is the result. So for instance, what it's saying is like if you roll a 14 out of 20, you get to go grab mana values that add up, and as long as they don't go past 14, you can put them onto the battlefield under your control. I think, yeah, it's not cast, it's just you put those. So yeah, that card's really good. Its brother, Ancient Gold Dragon from that same set, when it deals combat damage to a player, you roll a d20, you make that many 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens equal to the result. I think that's pretty cool. It's a one way that we can come out with a ton of little 1/1s that could help us block or whatever. Angelic Arbiter for 7 mana, it's a 5/6. Each opponent who casts a spell this turn can't attack with creatures, and vice versa. Each opponent who attacked with a creature can't cast spells this turn. I think that card's pretty good. Angel of Serenity. It's a 5/6 for 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile up to 3 other target creatures from battlefields and or creatures cards from graveyards. When Angel of Serenity leaves the battlefield, return the exile cards to their owner's hands. So here's the thing. Obviously, most of the time we'll pick our opponents. And the reason normally I don't like effects that say like, hey, when this card leaves the battlefield, your opponents get the cards back. This at least says, exile them, and then if this card will leave the battlefield, they only go to the hand. They don't go back to like the battlefield. But here's the other cool thing. We can choose our own graveyard, and then when it leaves, we can just grab stuff from our graveyard back and put it in our hand. And obviously, having stuff in our hand is nice with Kaalia. Balefire Dragon, great card, and I know it's expensive, but you got to have it in a deck like this. When it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. Can't beat that. It's a 6/6 for 7. Bladewing Deathless Tyrant, 6/6 Flying Haste. Now, this effect we're probably not going to get a whole lot of use out of, but I like it as a just in case. So it says, whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, for each creature card in your graveyard, you make a 2/2 black zombie knight creature token with menace. Like I said, we may not have that many creatures in our graveyard by the time that thing can deal damage, but if we do, it's just a big dragon with flying haste that can also make some zombie knight tokens with menace. That's pretty cool. Brain Stealer Dragon from Baldur's Gate. So I love the look of this card. This is one of my favorite cards in the deck. So it's a 6/6. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of each opponent's library. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though or any mana of any color to cast it. So that's cool. We got some versatility. We can kind of steal their stuff and cast them as if it was us. But here's the best part. Whenever a non-land permanent an opponent controls, or an opponent owns, enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. So basically, that's the incentive for us to want to play their cards off of this. If I can go, hey, I don't have anything great right now, but I'll cast your card, and then not only do I get to cast it, but you lose the CMC value out of your life. Like, that's cool. Demon of Loathing, Flying Trample, 7/7 for 7. When it deals combat damage to a player, the player sacrifices a creature. I like that. Dragon Mage. Now, I might take this card out eventually if we get some more support for this kind of strategy, more demons, dragons, angels. But as of right now, this thing, when it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards. I like, to think that I could just hold this. And if I'm down to like 2 cards left in hand or whatever, I wouldn't mind discarding my hand and drawing a fresh 7. Yes, do my opponents draw a fresh 7? Yes, that's true. But I like our chances in this deck. We have better stuff. And like I said, I like that in this scenario, we might be able to just draw a fresh hand and be back in the game if we're needing some help. Drakaseth Maul of Flames. Whenever it attacks, it deals 3 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. So when we cheat it out with Kaalia, we won't get the attack trigger because it's tapped and attacking. But if it were to untap and you get to swing with it again, then it will get its effect. We got Emiria Shepherd. It's not a white staple for me, but it's a card I like to use in a lot of my decks. So it's a 4/4 for 7. It's got landfall. Whenever a land enters your battlefield under your control, you may return a non-land permanent from your graveyard back to your hand. But if the land you put down was a plains, you get to put it back to the battlefield instead. So that's pretty cool. Excuse me, I'm burping. Exquisite Archangel. It's a 5/5 angel flyer for 7. If you would lose the game, instead exile this thing and your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. So that can help us out in a pinch. Lord of the Void, when it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 7 cards of that player's library, and you can put a creature from among them on the battlefield under control. That's great. Resolute Archangel, when it enters the battlefield, if our life total is less than our starting life total then becomes equal to our starting life total. So that's good. So far as Sky's Blade, so it has an effect that says you can pay a white and tap 4 untap creature you control with flying rather than pay its mana cost. That will most likely never happen. We won't use that way to get this card out. Not unless we did that ancient gold dragon that makes a lot of little 1/1 dragons. Aside from that, it's a 7/7 with flying and lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. That's the main thing, is that this thing won't have indestructible, but it gives our other creatures with flying indestructible, and that's basically our whole deck. So that's great. Sarah's Emissary. This was probably a mistake that they came out with in Modern Horizons 2, but anyway, we get to use it to our advantage. So it's a 7/7 angel with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a card type. You and creatures you control have protection from the chosen card type. I would say more than likely we're going to choose creatures because creatures have so many ETB effects. Then also, if our opponents were to have blockers, they can't block. So that's part of it. And then the other thing is, I guess maybe you would choose sorceries if you were really scared of like a board wipe. But in general, we're going to choose creatures. Velomachus Lorehold. This is the last 7-drop we play in here. Flying, Vigilance, Haste. It's a 5/5. Whenever it attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You can cast an instant or sorcery with mana value less than or equal to this thing's power from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest in your bottom of your library in a random order. So there's not a whole lot of ways to bump up power in this deck. So basically, he's pretty much always going to be a 5/5, which means you get to look at the top 7, and you're pretty much always picking an instant or sorcery with 5 mana or less to cast. Remember, yet again, this is an attack trigger. So if we have like Ishin 2 Evans is 1 out, that will work. But if we're just cheating this out, tap and attacking, its effect won't go off. Archfiend of Despair. So this is the newest edition. This is a card I used to own, and then I took it out because I was like, man, this card is like kind of lame. But my playgroup has gotten to such a level that I'm like, I'm not even concerned about this. My opponents will just have to deal with it. So it's like a wound reflection on a creature where it's saying like at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost that last turn. The only difference is this is on a body. It's a 6/6 flying demon for 8 mana, but also it has your opponents can't gain life, and that's just an added bonus. Okay, Avacyn, Angel of Hope. So Flying, Vigilance, Indestructible. Other permanents you control have Indestructible. There's a combo we have. I'll show you in a second. It's an 8/8. Most people know what the combo is, but I'll show you, and then you'll be like, yeah, figures. Pestilence Demon. I like this card. 7/6 for 8 mana. You can pay a black. This thing deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So if our opponents have like a lot of token creatures, like 1/1s, 2/2s, whatever, we can pay a black and get rid of them. Or if they're 2/2s, we can pay 2 black and get rid of all those creatures. Or if someone's low on life, we might be able to burn them out with that. So I like this card as just an option. Razaketh, the Foul-Blooded. My buddies hate this card, but I think he's dope. Okay, 8/8 Flying Trample. You can pay 2 life, sack another creature, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So once again, that Ancient Gold Dragon, if we were able to like swing and get like, let's say like 12 dragons, and then we were able to get Razaketh out, cool. I mean, yeah, we'll pay life for as long as it makes sense. Basically, we can just restock our hand and just choose what we want. So that's great. Villas, Broker of Blood, an 8/8. This card's great. It just doesn't see a whole lot of play in a lot of decks, but it's honestly a great card in black. So it's 8/8 flying. Stat line's great. Whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. So obviously that's good just in and of itself. If our opponents deal damage to us, we get to draw cards. But it even has the effect on it. You can pay a black, pay 2 life, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So not only can you weaken your opponent's creatures, possibly kill them, but whenever you do pay the life, that triggers his effect because you lost life. You get to draw that many cards. It's great. All right, last creature in the deck is Demon of Deathgate. So it's a 9 mana, 9/9 with Flying and Trample. It says you may pay 6 life, sack 3 black creatures rather than pay Demon of Deathgate's mana cost. Well, guess what? That's not going to happen. We're just going to cheat this thing out, and it's a 9/9. This is literally like if I was making a metal album, I'd be like, hey, Wizards of the Coast, can I borrow this like artwork for my metal album? Because I think it looks awesome. All right, let's go to the enchantments. We got Dragon Tempest. Gives all of our flying creatures haste, which is good. And then if a dragon were to enter the battlefield, we can deal X damage to target creature or player where X is the number of dragons you control. Once again, if we have that Ancient Gold Dragon out and we make 12 dragons, let's say, that's 12 damage that we're doing. Or actually it'd be 13 because we have the dragon itself. And then any other dragons we have. That's a lot of good damage. Heartless Summoning. This is one of my favorite black enchantments, but it's hard to find a deck to put it in because you don't want to mess with the stat lines. So what it says is creature spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. And that's saying cast. And then creatures you control get -1/-1. The thing that I've always had a problem with is in green decks, I love running Wild Pair, and the -1/-1 messes with the stat line. So if I'm not running green, I'd like to play Heartless Summoning in a deck. The other thing is there's a lot of cards that are like, if you're focused on one tribe, you'd rather run like an Urza's Incubator and not mess with the stat lines. But in this deck, because we're running 3 different tribes and it's all just high CMC stuff, it works perfectly in this deck. And like I said, we don't really have a whole lot of things that have 1 toughness that are going to die. Like that Ancient Gold Dragon, the creatures that I make off that would die. But Kaalia, I don't care if she's a 1/1. As long as she can attack and she won't die like getting blocked, I don't really care. So as long as she's good to attack, that's fine with me. Fervor, giving our creatures haste, that's good. Pain Magnification, I've told you guys this is a Rakdos staple for me in Commander. Because even my opponents deal damage to each other, Pain Magnification can still trigger. So that's good. Protection Racket, this is a newer card that came out last year that really works well in this deck. At the beginning of your upkeep, repeat the following process for each opponent in turn order. Reveal the top card of your library. That player can pay life equal to its mana value. If they choose to pay it, you exile that card. If they don't want to pay the mana value out of their life, you get to put it in your hand. So basically, because we play such high CMC stuff, we just, every person's upkeep, we're like, hey, here's my top card. It's a 7-drop. Do you want to pay 7 life, or do I get to just add this into my hand? And most of the time they'll be like, yeah, just add it into your hand. I'm like, sweet. I get to just add more cards and draw more cards every turn. It's awesome. Fires of Invention. This is great in this deck because basically, if our lands aren't exactly what we need, Fires of Invention, we could be like, cool, now I'm not worried about what lands I'm playing. What it says is you can cast only 2 spells each turn, and you can't cast spells on other people's turns. So basically, we don't run a lot of instants in here, so we're not worried about doing things on other people's turns. So that doesn't matter. Being able to cast 2 spells a turn, that's fine. Now it says you may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana cost. So basically, if you play Fires of Invention and you have 4 lands out, you get to cast basically something 4 mana or less that same turn without tapping any lands. You just get to cast it for free. As long as you have the lands that's basically your range of CMCs that you're playing. So if you have 5 lands with Fire's Invention, you can cast 2 things, 5 mana or less from your hand. They just can't be... They could be an instant, they just can't be an instant on someone else's turn, basically. Fire's Invention, it doesn't go in every red deck, but the decks that does go in, it works great in. Guild Feud, this is a kind of a guilty pleasure card for me. I could understand why someone wouldn't want to play it, but I like it. So it's a 6 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent reveals the top 3 cards of his or her library. You may put a creature from among them onto the battlefield, then put the rest into their graveyard. You do the same with the top 3 cards of your library. If 2 creatures are put on the battlefield, they fight each other. So basically, on my upkeep, me and another opponent mill 3 cards, and if a creature is among them, they get to go onto the battlefield. And then if both of us get a creature, they have to fight each other. Well, I'm going to take the chance that my deck, that as you saw, is 6 drops, 7 drops, and 8 drops. I like my chances in a fight against somebody else, is all I'm saying. All right, Sunbird's Invocation, red staple for me. I went over what it did in my last profile that I just uploaded. Basically, you get to when you cast something from your hand, Fire's Invention goes, hey, what's that card's mana value? Look at your top X. So if you cast a 5-drop, once Sunbirds is on the field, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your library and cast something 5 mana or less. The higher CMC you cast, the more cards you get to look at and the better cards you get to cast. Warstorm Surge doesn't go in every red deck, but if you're playing big creatures, Warstorm Surge got to be in there. When a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So some of you might be asking, Chris, why don't you play Terror of the Peaks? I like Terror of the Peaks as the card, and if it was like a $2 card, sure, I'd pick it up. But I just look at Warstorm Surge as like a budget alternative. Like, I know you probably looked at the cards in my deck, you're like, budget? What are you talking about? You dropped a lot of money on this deck. I did, but Terror of the Peaks, if it was just a little cheaper, I'd be like, yeah, I'll look into it. But Warstorm Surge is fine with me because it's basically 1 more mana. And like I said, even if I had Terror of the Peaks in my hand, I'd probably want to cheat out something a little bit more powerful. And the last enchantment is Baneful Omen, a card I love. It's 7 mana. At the beginning of your end step, you can reveal the top card of your library. If you do, each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. As we've talked about, the percentages basically tell me I'm either going to have a land, which obviously won't do anything, or I'm going to have a 7-drop, or 6 mana at least or higher. So being able to drain my opponents at the end of every turn for at least 6 or more, I like that. All right, let's do the artifacts. So I got Jet Medallion. My black spells are reduced by 1. Pearl Medallion. My white spells are reduced by 1. Ruby Medallion. My red spells are reduced by 1. I love the medallions. Those are my mana rocks. Hate me if you want. Quicksilver Amulet. You pay for, tap it. You can put a creature from your hand on the battlefield. Gets around, the Fires of Invention where, if we're not using our lands to tap, we can tap our lands with Quicksilver Amulet and cheat out something else, which is cool. Or just in general, if they get rid of Kaalia, we're like, hey, I can still pay 4 and cheat big stuff out. The last artifact is Omen Machine. All right, so hear me out on this card. All right, I'm going to read what it does, and then I'm going to try to explain why I play it. So it's a 6-mana artifact. It says players can't draw cards. So I just wanted that part right there. Have you guys noticed that I don't have a whole lot of cards that actually say draw? Like I showed you that protection racket. That technically doesn't say draw. It says the card gets added to your hand if they don't want to pay the value. But we don't actually draw that many cards. So remember that dragon, that wizard, what was the guy's name? Why can't I think of the guy's name? Dragon Mage? Yeah, Dragon Mage, this guy. So the cool little combo that you can do is if you get Dragon Mage out, you have Omen Machine. If you swing, nobody's going to draw any cards. They just discard their whole hand, and we just run it like that. So the second part of this card, it says at the beginning of each player's draw step, the player exiles the top card of their library. If it's a land, they can put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, the player casts it without paying its mana cost available. So here's the thing. A lot of people run a lot of draw stuff in their decks, so this would shut that down. And then on top of it, because our CMC in this deck is generally going to be higher than what someone else is playing, I feel like we're going to get the best value out of this card. Plus, so they get to cast it without paying its mana cost, but like I said, a lot of times they might get a 2-drop, 3-drop, whatever, because that's what most people are running in their commander decks. And I'm like, okay, cool, you got to cheat that out, but you can't draw cards. Like, I like my chances. And on my end, I'm like, yeah, top card. Ooh, look, 7-drop. It's like they're going to find out pretty quick this card doesn't really fight fairly. All right, let's go Sorceries. Night's Whisper, I explained that last time. I play it in pretty much all my black decks. It's like a pot of greed. Armageddon, destroy all lands. So that's the card that if you pair with Avacyn, This actually happened earlier when I was playing. I actually still ended up losing the game because my buddy was Jesse. He was playing. There's like an commander from Innistrad. I want to say Midnight Hunt. But anyway, that card, it's the guy that says like your instances, whenever it's day or night, instances sorceries get reduced by however many +1/+1s he has on it. Look it up if you guys are curious. But anyway, that card, all he needed was 1 blue mana, and he was able to come back and win because that card's ridiculous. But anyway, Armageddon, destroy all lands. Even if we don't have Avacyn out, blowing up everybody's lands. Now, some people say blowing up people's lands without a strategy, like that's a bad idea. True, I get all that. Sometimes it can save you. Like, I don't care if the game goes down to a halt. Even if it saves you, we're like, okay, cool, now I can catch up. We can be on the same playing field. That's fine. But mainly, if you got Kaalia out and you got Armageddon in your hand, you can play it. You play it, and that way, like, people can't keep playing their stuff, but we can keep cheating out creatures. That's the main reason it's in there. Ruination, this is a red staple for me. I explained it in my last video. Destroy all non-basic lands. We don't run any, so we're all good. Sinister Waltz. So this is a card that I really like, and I like to play in multiple decks. This has synergy with Velomachus Lorehold because it's a 5-mana sorcery, so we're pretty much, this is a card we can cast off that, along with Ruination, Armageddon, that stuff. So it says, choose 3 target creature cards in your graveyard. Return 2 of them at random to the battlefield and put the other on the bottom of your library. So we only play good stuff, and if I'm getting to choose what out of my graveyard what I want, I'll choose my 3 best stuff, and then roll the dice, and whatever 2 pop up on the dice, they'll get put on the battlefield, and then one of those cards gets on the bottom of my library. I'm like, this is a pretty good card for 5 mana. They don't come in tapped. I don't have to sack any creatures, so I like it. And the last sorcery is Ruinous Ultimatum. I think if you run a Mardu deck, I think you need to run this card because it's just too good. It's the best ultimatum card in Commander. Destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. Yep, that'll get the job done. All right, and the last 2 cards of the deck are both instants. We got Chance for Glory, which is a card I might end up taking out, but anyway, it's for 3 mana. Creatures you control gain indestructible. That's not until in a turn. That's just the creatures you control gain indestructible. So if you manage to live past this card, that's great. So it says, take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. So I know what you're thinking. That sounds terrible, lose the game. Yeah, we have that Exquisite Archangel that I showed like probably 20 minutes ago. That card says if you would lose the game, you exile Exquisite Archangel, and then your life total gets reset. So, yeah, Chance for Glory is either a last resort, where if you're like, I'm about to lose or my opponent's about to win, let me see if an extra turn will get it done for me. And in this deck, if you can get an extra turn in general, that might be good enough because you might be able to cheat enough stuff and get enough damage in. So there's that right there. And then on top of it, if you can get Exquisite Archangel out, that's going to buy you an extra turn with Chance for Glory, and then you don't actually end up losing the game, which is great. Chance for Glory is like a guilty pleasure for me. There'll be people that get mad at me for playing because they're like, what if you lose? And I'm like, dude, I'm only going to play it normally if I'm about to lose anyway, or if I have the combo. All right, last card in the deck, Consume the Meek. I love the artwork of this card. So it's for 5 mana. It's an instant. Once again, this card can also be cast off Velomachus Lorehold. But anyway, it says, destroy each creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less that can't be regenerated. I don't know if you guys were counting, because you didn't know this card was going to be in here, but basically, that Keen Duelist I showed at the very beginning, and then there's like Ishin Two Heavens is 1 and Kaalia Zenith Seeker, that's the only 3 creatures that we play in this deck that would get destroyed off this card. And to be honest, if those get destroyed, whatever. But everything else in our deck's too high a CMC, but for our opponents, this gets rid of tokens, this gets rid of, maybe possibly their commander, or small creatures they play, mana dorks, whatever. So I think that's pretty good. Anyway, that's the deck profile for Kaalia the Vast. I really love this deck. Like I said, I've been playing this deck for like probably 4 years now. I love it. I know it pretty well. It's not super complicated, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. But anyway, that's going to be it. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how I'm doing. Have a good one.